Welcome to Salcedo Paranormal. It is Friday, January 13th, 2023. And tonight we are doing a panel discussion show. First one in this show. And we'll be talking about electricity and the paranormal and going in maybe a direction that you might not expect with it. As always, you can find the links to all the shows, along with links to social media and other ways to contact me at the podcast page. That is salcidoparanormal.podbean.com. That's SALSIDO paranormal.podbean.com. Always happy to hear from you all, whether you have comments or questions or topic suggestions, or stories of paranormal experiences, whether they're your own or from others that you trust. Happy to either read those or have you join me on the show to talk about them. And that's going to be part of the show today, so that'll be fun. And of course, when you do a panel, that doesn't mean you do that on your own. So I'm happy to welcome two good friends on the show. We'll start with Jay. Hello, Jay. How are you doing?
Good, James. How are you?
Good. And then also another, actually both of you have been on the show before. I just realized that at different times. But also Apoc is here. Welcome.
Hello. Welcome. This is a cool thing.
Yeah,
Good to be here.
We've been talking about this for a while, talking about doing it on other shows, but just worked out that this is where we're going to do this. And the plan is to do this once a month with a different pair of friends each month. And it should be fun. So, but
Definitely.
yeah, so we were talking about just the weird things that happen with energy and electricity and the paranormal and all these different things. And so just thought it'd be a fun one to start with in this series of shows. And turns out that Jay, you've had a little bit of experience with that yourself. If you want to go into that.
Yeah, just when we were starting the show here, we couldn't get started because of the electrical things that we were doing.
Sure.
No, but I noticed that, sometimes a radio playing or stuff like that calms it all down. The television, leaving the television on is kind of a big thing. It just seems like it's drawn to the energy, the more quiet without the electricity and all that stuff running around. It seems that it's not there. It's when you start shutting all those things off that it seems to be more there. And I don't know if it's because you're more focused on it and you're not focused on the radio or the TV, or maybe they're just focused on the radio and the TV and that's all they wanted in the first place,
Yeah, and yours is not the first case where I've heard of this before, where there has been devices like that even acting strange in different ways where they turn on their own. And it does seem like maybe sometimes whoever is there just wants something to listen to or to watch. And I mean, if you don't have much else going on, maybe that kind of makes sense. If you feel like you're stuck in a location, or if you just like a location, but you also want these things on, but then when they're not on, and maybe if in some cases where, for whatever reasons, the entities can't turn the devices on their own, all they want is that little bit of help with from the people that are there to keep those things on. And when they're not on, they kind of try to get your attention to get you to turn it back on.
Well, one of the first things that happened here is it's a very old house. So it has the strings that you pull in the middle of the room to turn the lights on. And it didn't matter what you carried through that room. If the light was off, a broom, a ladder, or whatever, would get tangled up in that string and turn the light on. And it was just really weird. And it was like, okay, this is a weird thing going on. New house, everything else like that. You're trying to get adjusted to your new surroundings. So the simple solution was don't turn the lights off. If it seems like this kind of stuff is going on every time you walk into a room, Just leave the light on. Don't turn it off when you leave, Pay a little bit of extra to the power company, I suppose. But it seems to tone it on. I mean, to this day, those lights are on, just, I'm,
Yeah,
I
that
don't know.
is odd.
I'm sorry. It's odd, but the thing is, the electricity part of it is like almost makes me think that it's grounded. It's looking for, because that's how electricity goes. It wants to find its way to the ground. So
Yeah, there's
maybe
been times in my own apartment here where, and I don't talk about this a lot because it's one of those things where I'm not totally sure that it wasn't just me forgetting, but there have been times where I've gone somewhere and I came back and I found a light on, and it's like, wait, I'm pretty sure I didn't have that light on when I left. And everything else is the same as it was in here. And doesn't look like any maintenance or anyone else has been through. But it's like I could have swore I had that light off because I don't like lights to be on a lot because I have light sensitive eyes, and so I normally won't leave lights on for just because. So I think sometimes there is something to that, and maybe it depends on the place whether that's always the case or it's just that case once in a while. But there's been times where there have been lights on here, and it's like, oh well, okay. Apparently, someone wanted it on for a little bit.
here's an odd synchronicity with it. Just but what we're talking today, and it just dawned on me when you were saying what you were saying, is that I've been doing a lot of digging downstairs in the basement and everything. Last month we used 8 times the amount of electricity that we normally use. Not actually 8 times. It was like 7.65 or whatever. I did the math on it just because it was like, holy crap, how can you use that much electricity in a month? And it wasn't like I was using power tools or anything like that. We weren't really using a lot more electricity, but our bill went up 8 times
Wow.
more than normal. And we're not using any more electricity in the second month of all the digging and construction that to go down there. And we used 7.65 less than we did last month. It's just like, how can you possibly use, I don't know. I do construction and we don't use that much with people running, power saws and planers and compressors and all that kind of stuff. It was an unbelievable spike. And I just thought, that's weird because that's when I was doing all the digging in the basement. And I don't know. It was something that came to mind that just happened, that when you were talking, that we used all that more electricity down there,
Yeah, I also talking about synchronicities. I had to crack up last night when you messaged me after the last show I did about Lovecraft, and that last story was about digging in the basement, and
it was just like, come on, James.
Yeah, I was like, sorry, I wasn't aware. You got to tell me these things.
No, it's a creepy old basement in a funeral home. I mean, you're down there digging in the dirt. What do you expect you're going to find?
Yeah,
which I have not found anything yet cool other than
that is good.
Lumps of coal and stupid little things like that. Cool rocks. Nothing good.
Yeah, but the other things I've had happen here with electricity, I'll never forget that one time, and I think I've told the story before on the show where I had this, and I do think that these different beings can use the wires and devices to travel through, because I had that one time where I was here at night and I got this feeling like I needed to turn off my modem, and my computer, and it just would not go away. And so eventually I did. And I felt this energy like kind of coming towards the apartment, but it was almost like it was coming through the wires. But it stopped when it got here. It was almost like it was only going through maybe the through the internet in a way, through maybe even just the direct line that goes into the wall, and it stopped when it got here because it couldn't get into the devices maybe it wanted to. I don't know. And it was just the oddest thing. And then it left. Eventually, I fell asleep, and then woke up the next day, and everything was fine. I turned everything back on, but I there was something going on. There was some kind of presence that was using the devices to travel, I believe.
I mean, it's the fact that you noticed it too. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You had the premonition that it was coming.
Yeah.
know?
No, it would not. That feeling. At first, the first time I had it, I was like, "Wow, I must be imagining things because that doesn't seem right." But it just would not go away. And I kind of, I do write off feelings when it's just like it happens one time and then it's done. Because after all, I am a paranormal talk show host and also sci-fi and paranormal fiction author. So there are some weird thoughts that go through my head. But this would not leave, would not stop. So, but yeah, I don't know, Apoc, if you have any thoughts on all that, or we can keep on going.
Yeah, I do. So about electricity, things coming on by themselves. I've had a couple of experiences, and Jay, you do live in an old funeral home, so good God, who knows
What do you expect?
what's hanging out there, right? But so the one that popped into my mind was the car, because it was the weirdest thing possible related to electricity. I had an old AMC station wagon. I think it was like ridiculously old, like a 68 or something. And so it had like no extra like computer bits or anything like that. And I lived in a particular place where the vehicle was parked outside, and as I would walk out the door, I could see it right there. And by the way, I remembered one extra little piece of information since the last time I told you this, James. In the winter, and it was in the winter, every once in a while, and it was, by the way, in particular when I would feel like I didn't want to go to the car because I had to warm it up, and it would take so long to warm it up and be in there,
Yeah.
And it was the winter time, and so occasionally when I was particularly feeling that cold, I would walk outside, and the car would turn on, and just by itself, and it happened like 3, maybe 4 times. And it was just, that was one I don't have a witness to, and I really wish I did, because it was just the most like impossible thing. But the ignition is charged by the battery, and so it's related to electricity. And I have, of course, all the times, I guess we're probably going to get into this, but all the times that lights would turn on and off as you would drive under them. That's a thing that pops up with the electric people thing. And that would happen to me all the time from the time I was a little kid. But yeah, those were a couple of things that popped into my head with when Jay was talking.
Are you talking street lights? Like the street lights flicker?
Not flicker.
Right.
But the thing is, I know when they're going to do it, and that's the weird part. It's like I've got a feeling, and I look at a particular light that I'm tuning into a feeling with, and that light will, by the time I get to it, or just as I pass it, because I always glance back and make sure if it doesn't turn off, it will turn off. It's like, but if I don't have that feeling, it doesn't bring it to my attention, whether it's happening or not, And same thing with turning it on, if I get that feeling and there's a headlight up ahead that is that's off, and again I get that sort of tuning feeling, then by the time I get to it, it usually pops on. I would say 9 times out of 10 it happens. And so it is odd. It's very interesting.
Yeah. I just wonder too if maybe with that car, if you weren't somehow turning it on yourself.
I'm wondering, yeah. That's it occurred to me that could be happening. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's
Yeah.
also the house that we had a lot of other experiences in, me and my roommate. So
Yeah.
I it could be either. It could be anything really, but yeah, it's a possibility for sure.
Well, and of course, there's the thing that happens in a lot of UFO stories or alien stories, even just other paranormal stories, where strange either objects in the sky or creatures are seen along roads, and people's vehicles will just turn off.
Yeah. Yes. That's one of the creepiest things, I think. One of the creepiest phenomena with electricity is when you see a UFO and your vehicle turns off. And there have also been household electrical disruptions when people experience UFOs as well. And I'm not sure um, if I could remember all the stories, but there are several, and some of them happen like if they see a UFO like out the window, or if they see one outside and go inside, or when the electricity turns off, they'll go outside. There are stories in line with all of those scenarios where where electricity is being shut off is involved in UFO sightings.
Yeah, and then that's the other thing that happens with UFO sightings that's kind of just maybe starting to be talked about more these days than it used to be is that when there's a sighting, there's also other paranormal activity going on in the home after the
Yes.
sighting. Poltergeist
Mm.
kind of stuff, sightings of creatures, sightings of the aliens themselves or what appear to be the aliens themselves, but also just sightings of ghosts, spirits, deceased loved ones, especially in dreams in some cases.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, it's amazing how all this does seem to be connected at times in different ways.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's so many stories like that. I do think they're connected in some way, or they seem at least perceptually connected in that way. I'm gonna
Yeah,
have to
oh,
mute
that's
up. I'm gonna have to mute up for a moment.
no problem. But yeah, that's the thing, and I agree. That's important to say that it seems like that because, as I always say, I don't know anything, and it's there are things that seem to be connected, and but yeah, what do you think about all that, Jay?
Well, I mean, I was just Apocalypse telling the story about her car. I remember having a paranormal experience one time while driving, and it actually fried the alternator in the car.
Wow.
Like driving down the road, had the experience and didn't think anything of it or anything. Well, I did. I thought, I actually told my father, I was a kid right after, starting to be driving age and stuff like that. And he gave me that, sometimes people are just lost and they haven't found their way yet, And I'm going on the reason why I had the conversation with my father is like, what do you think happened? I says, I don't know. I saw something really weird on the side of the road. And then the battery died in the car and it like drained it all out. And then it wasn't the battery because somebody stopped and helped me and they gave me a jump. It was the alternator. And it, obviously you take the part off the car and take it to the shop and have them look at it and get the new one and everything like that. But it actually fried the voltage regulator. And the guy was kind of like, wow, that's weird. Usually these things don't fry. But it did. It fried the voltage regulator and the alternator of the car. There was a woman standing on the side of the road was the paranormal experience, but that's
Yeah.
a
Yeah,
different story because she was there every time I drove on that road. You know, kind of like the lady in the mirror. You know,
Interesting. Go on, Apoc.
but
the alternator, usually there's one part, and I'm not sure if it's the voltage regulator, but I don't think so because it's a mechanism. It's a mechanic. It's like a metal piece that usually cracks in alternators that makes them go out.
right,
And the voltage regulator, that isn't that, and Jay, you probably know better than I, uh, isn't that like connected to it connects to an internal part, but it's like external to the voltage
yeah, it's
regulator.
out. It's
Yeah.
actually outside of the. It's not
Yeah.
in the alternator. It's on
Right.
the side of it. And the guy was like, "Wow, that's weird."
Yeah, that is kind of weird because I know, and I've changed out many alternators, and the one piece that does go bad is the metal thing. There's a metal piece that turns that keeps it going, and that's the part that usually just cracks and messes up, and you have to replace that one part. And that's
Yeah,
why you buy rebuilt alternators, and it's fine because that one piece is the one that
yeah,
goes
it's like a
wrong.
little Woodruff key thing,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
but you have to have the patience to take the alternator apart to get to the key because it's all the way on the inside.
Which is
Huh.
why you let other people do that.
Unless you
You
got a
buy
lot of time on your hands and there's
Mhm.
no internet and you're just listening to the radio because there's
Yeah.
nothing else to do. Back before we had the internet.
But yeah, the voltage regulator actually does connect to the electricity. So if there were a surge, if there were if there was an overload of some kind, then it could probably screw up the voltage regulator, right?
Well, I mean, the funny thing about that experience is that was the only time I slammed on the brakes on the interstate is what I did when I saw it and stopped and was like, "What?" And then that was the time that it died. Every other time, I never had an issue.
Yeah.
That one time that I WTF trying to mind my language on your show, James.
I
So
always
maybe
forget to say anything about that too, so it's not the. No worries, but thank you. Sorry, Apoc. Go ahead.
I just noticed that about your show, James,
Yeah.
because you do have
so
the best show on radio.
Oh, thank you.
yes, sir. Absolutely. So if you stopped so fast, you got whatever it was, you got its attention, maybe. And maybe that's why it tried. Because I couldn't see how stopping quickly like that could actually trigger or a physical malady with the voltage regulator. That wouldn't make sense
Yeah,
to me.
the alternator's not going to know that I stopped real fast.
Right, exactly.
The brakes are going to know it, but the alternator won't.
Right, right, exactly. It's not connected like that.
Hmm.
It's very
Well, maybe it
interesting.
was some kind of defense or just a reaction, even that maybe even the entity wasn't even where it was going to happen. It just their attention turning towards you just did that, and maybe it's hard to say
Right.
whether it intended to or not when it comes to these things.
That makes
I did have
sense.
a tendency to speed up an awful lot from then on when I was going through that area. To tussle right along.
Yeah, I don't blame you. But yeah, I'm trying to think of other. I don't think, and that's something I just realized now that I've never really had a lot of experiences with electronics outside of my own home, except for the one in my dad and stepmom's house, with the light and the ceiling fan turning on. But but there are people that have experiences with this, and it doesn't even seem to be really paranormal. Like you were describing, Apoc, there's just this energy that you feel, and then things happen, and
Yeah,
you're aware of it, and that is what they call the slider
yeah.
phenomenon.
I
So
I also Yeah, the slider thing also has to do with pretty much any electronics. And when I was growing up, I could wear, for some reason, I could wear digital watches, but I couldn't wear, you know, mechanized watches. That kind of goes in the other direction, though, which is odd. My mechanized watches would always die, even though I guess it does. I think they did still use it. They did still use a battery. I only had a couple of wind-up watches. I'm dating myself maybe, but when I was a kid. But yeah, for some reason I could wear the digital watches and they wouldn't die. But the ones that were mechanized would die. And that's weird. I loved those and I wanted to be able to wear them and I couldn't. But that's a sliders thing. I mean, the whole kitschy word of sliders, whatever, now they have a word for it, but it's been going on forever. Um, there's a lot of other phenomenon with people who report to have these events happen, and a lot of them are related to electronics in the home, lights in the home going on and off. People, was it Jay? Who was it that was talking about um, going through a um, an electric, the things that you go through when you pass through a door of a store, that it would go off all the time. I may be mixing it up with a radio show, but the story is that this person would go a in any store with one of those detectors, and it would go off. And every time they'd walk out, it would do the same. Now, they had actually had some experiences with UFOs and potential abduction. And they had believed it was a girl. It's actually, I'm remembering it better now. So um, she had passed out one night, and for several months to a year after that, and having a mark on her body that was unusual, and feeling a lump in that area that was unusual. That's when all of it started happening. And then at some point within 6 months to a year, it just suddenly stopped happening. But it was so consistent that that phenomena for her freaked her out more than even seeing UFOs or thinking that she might have been abducted, because it was like her affecting the stuff, and then suddenly it stopped, and then the lump went away. So I wonder if sometimes these things are related to possible implants or something like that.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, and what was I gonna say? I think I forgot. That happens. But no, that's okay. But yeah, it is a thing, and these these different that's what I was gonna say. I have heard over the years different people in the whole paranormal community say that they don't like to get too close to any kind of computers, electronics, because they always seem to break down when they're near them.
Yeah.
And it's just that seems to be like the more extreme kind of case where you can't you can't be near any kind of computerized device, because then they'll just crash or just break down. But I've heard that multiple times with different people.
Yeah, I have to. The stories are really wild with the electronic thing. I'm trying to think of some other phenomena that is odd with them, but right now it's not coming to mind. So, do you have any other stories, James or Jay?
Well,
Oops, go ahead, Jay.
one of the things that I know, I've had a ghost hunter trip. I've been, semi-involved in that, and everything they bought with them was an electronic device. The little cameras that they set up on the little tripods and left laying around, and the the craziest thing that they had, which I thought was really odd, was one of those. It's like a ding dong. When you walk through the ray, it'll bing bing. You know, they
Motion detector. Yeah.
yeah, they set those things up everywhere. And they, oh yeah, we use these. These are great. They're, that way we kind of know where things are moving around. And then we can record there. So they went around and they dropped off all those little motion detector things all over the place. And then whenever one would go off, we'd head that way. Their EM readers and all that. But all that stuff is electronic. So, I mean, obviously, scientifically speaking, the people that are going out there debunking themselves, doing hours and hours of recording and video, making sure they're time stamping it together, all that stuff to find the little anomalies that they find. Everything is electronic. All of the tools that they use, I mean, it's just so. Is that a bit of proof that the electricity flowing around and everything else like that has something to do with that?
Yeah, I think so. Yep.
That's a good point. I mean, so electromagnetism is in the light spectrum, and light is a frequency. And if they can adjust or adapt to the frequency that's being received by the mechanism, then they might be able to figure out a way to tweak it,
Yep. Yeah, and that's the thing with various those electromagnetic field readers or detectors, where they have different colored lights for the different level of the field, and that's what some of those investigators they do use those for that. They'll ask for certain levels, in other words, certain colors to be lit up on the device
right?
for responses, and that is an amazing thing. And then, but also the hard part, I think the difficult part is sometimes they'll take those devices places where there isn't even any power systems that are on, and yet these devices will just be pinged. They'll just be maxed out, and they won't appear to respond to anything. And the question there is it just picking up on some energy field that they don't know what it is or where it's coming from? Or is that someone that's conscious that's just like, hey, you can sense me? You can sense me. This is amazing. And just doesn't know how to back off or doesn't want to back off. And but by maxing that device out, there's no way to communicate.
Right. Yeah. Very possible. Very possible. And here's another thing, since we're talking about electric people. What if the people could be putting out extra electromagnetism, and possibly the electric field around them is potentially getting excited or something, and then the mechanism is responding to the people themselves.
Yeah, definitely. It makes me wonder now if you were to do a pool of paranormal investigators that that were out there, how many of them have ever had experiences with with devices,
Yeah.
doing odd things outside of the investigations.
Right. That's an
That's
interesting. Yeah.
yeah.
That would be an interesting thing to follow.
That's a definite. That is an excellent. Does that box just go off like the same way it did in the basement of the Masonic Temple when it's sitting on your desk in your house?
And maybe you're having you're having an extreme or a higher level of emotions at a certain time due to whatever's going on in your life. I mean, because I've heard that too with devices. So yeah, definitely. Yep.
I might be able to find a guy to talk to about that actually, because that last group of ghost hunters that went through the temple there, they built their own. He worked at a radio factory, where he had access to all the cool tools and, you know, ability to print the boards and stuff like that he needed. But when they came, he was the guy that I was telling you that was being a jerk. And it was like, you know, you're asking it the questions. It's obviously giving you a bad, you know, they were asking questions. Would you like us to leave it alone and things like that? And the thing was like, yes. You know, it's like, okay, let's go. And he started hounding it, you know, and that's just rude. But the thing is, though, is, you know, they made their own tools.
Yeah.
You know, I was just wondering if, you know, find a way to get back in touch with that guy and ask him. I says, you know, just the simple question: how many times does that thing go off in your house when you're not doing one? You know,
Right.
to wonder whether or not the energy is coming from us. You know, we're adding to that. You know, we've talked about that lots before. Don't invite it into your house, James.
Too late.
Well, exactly. You know, the
Yeah.
radio starts blaring downstairs in the basement in the middle of the night. Don't go down there because the guy is going to get you. You know, there's a reason why. Leave it alone.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah, but no, and I've heard that before, like people not even so much necessarily with the EMF readers, but the either the spirit boxes or the just the sound, the voice recorders, where people will just leave them on in their homes, which I think is another way of inviting presences in, but where they will get, you know, pick up things on those devices at their homes. And sometimes it's loved ones that have passed on, that you know, their loved ones. Other times it's just random things, you know. And so I wonder if just that. I wonder if, how much of it is a combination of the device itself and then the person's own energy and their openness to having those experiences as well.
You have a point. You definitely have a point, because I think when we're more open, we have the ability, regardless of what people believe, you know, um, to be to receive more phenomena, you know. And so if let's say, and that would be an interesting study as well, to go back and look at the electric people, quote unquote, um and see if they've had more ghost experiences than other people, or you know, paranormal phenomena, or even UFO sightings,
Yeah,
Sasquatch sightings. You know, it would be interesting, because what if they are simply more open to having phenomena happen, you know?
could be. Yeah. So, and I guess we could probably maybe get to that now. You think, APOC? Just if you want to talk a little bit about what you, at least what you remember of
Mhm.
what that term means.
Yeah.
Electric people.
Well, well, I think we've covered the majority of it. That they call electric people the sliders, but then there are these other people, and these other people emit light. And there's one story where I think it was World War II, where the wounds on the soldiers would emit a light. Some of them not. And the story goes that the wounds that would emit light um, would actually heal faster, and more of those people would survive than the ones that did not emit light. And they think they narrowed it down to a bacterium that was affecting in a positive way the wounds, and um, it was basically luminescent, you know. So they called it something that was um, that was. Oh, yeah. Okay, hold on.
Um, I do remember what you're talking about. Apoc did share a couple links with me before the show. I believe it was something like Angel Glow or something like that. Where
Yeah,
yeah, and
and then
that
they
is
changed
an
it.
amazing thing. Yeah,
Yeah, just real quickly, before they changed it to a word that sounded like Satan thing, like instead of the
oh,
angel
yes,
thing. Isn't that weird that they did that? Because, I mean, initially they thought that it was coming from an angelic source because it was saving lives. And then somehow over time it got changed to like Luciferian or something like that, the bacterium.
Lucifer in the word, yeah, in the name, yeah.
That's like, really? That's so weird.
Of
I
course,
mean,
because
Lucifer was an angel, but
Yeah,
it's
I
just
would like to see that link because I would like to know what that bacterium is.
yeah.
I
Oh, well,
mean,
maybe
wouldn't you want crap loads of that around?
maybe. I
Well, I
mean,
mean, if it's
maybe.
healing people when they get shot in the
Yeah,
middle of a war and they're healing faster,
yeah,
I mean, wouldn't that be something you should be growing in your basement? You
maybe.
know,
Maybe we don't know what else it does, but yeah, maybe. So that's one source of the like glowing people, and then there were there were two girls that and I can't remember their stories right off hand, and the link that I sent you, James, I just revisited like the first story, so that's the one that I'm remembering. So please correct me if they went over this and I'm giving false uh, information, but um, there were two girls that glowed. Um, I'll just give what I remember, and it's so basic. So uh, there were girls that glowed, and they couldn't figure out why. Um, and that's basically all I remember of those stories. But there are so many more. It's very interesting, and sometimes I wonder if it actually connects um, to the phenomena of spontaneous combustion, because that's something I've always kind of connected in that way, and the phenomena of the quote unquote Kundalini energy,
right,
because they can't figure out what causes it. And it is a phenomena. I've researched it thoroughly, and it's freaking real. I mean, it's so there's there are a lot of theories, but they just don't work, you know?
yeah. And the combustion thing, that seems like maybe just the more extreme or the more unfortunate end to that whole, or just the unfortunate like extreme level of that in that case. Uh,
Maybe.
but the other thing that this makes me think of is I wonder how often these glows are just somehow related to one's aura that is somehow visible in some cases.
Yeah, maybe. Some, like in some parts, stronger than others, because I think it was like different parts of these people who glowed. And uh, I could, I guess, connect that to if they were having maybe a problem in that area, like a physical problem in that area, then maybe their aura would get brighter. Maybe the energy around them would get stronger in that area. Uh, Something
Yeah,
like that.
could be. Also, it's the other reason I think of auras is there are some times where people will see other people's auras
Hmm.
and or their own energy. We've talked about that before, actually, in the missing show, the last
Yeah,
episode of the show.
yeah,
Um, where people will see their own energy. If you want to talk about that, you can, but if not, it's okay. But
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. So I had and it was you that actually triggered the idea for me. But when I had been going through the Kundalini thing, I had an experience where many times at night I would see this purple light, in front of me just swirling like a mist or a fog would swirl in the wind. And it was deep, it was rich, it was beautiful, it was wild, and occasionally when I would close my eyes I would also see it, but mostly when I would open my eyes. And I like to experiment when I have weird things happen. Um so I would do this test, is this in my own head or is this out here?
Right.
And sometimes it was both, and sometimes it was just one, and sometimes it was just external, right? And you had mentioned something about the aura, and I'm like, oh, yeah, I could have been potentially seeing my own aura at that point, which would be kind of exceptionally cool. And it was only at night when all the lights were off and everything was very dark, you know.
Yeah. There was this one time, and it never happened. It's never happened again. But this one time, I remember I was looking at Logan, my pet, my feline. I will say. I don't want to trigger
Thank
the
you.
DLGs, but and I could have sworn I saw a really faint white glow around her, and this was in the middle of the day, and I just happened to look, and it was there, and then it was just gone. But I really wonder, and of course, since then I've had these experiences with her appearing to teleport and other things. So, but that's a whole other thing. I think I've already covered that before quite a bit. But but yeah, and also just for anyone that's wondering what I'm talking about, the Lost Show, that was a night of synchronicities.
Yes.
And one of those odd things about that night was that the recording software, I was using the main software and the backup software, and both crashed one
Both.
after the other the same night, and they're not even run from the same server.
Right.
So
And the weirdness about that is that the show was freaking wildly perfect in its synchronicities. So we had decided to come up with three shows each, or not three stories each, and tell one right after the other, take turns telling the stories. And ironically, it was about, part of what was in that show was a phenomenon of electricity. And so one of us would tell the story, and the other one would respond, and then the next one would tell the story. And in the one of the most bizarre cases of synchronicity I've ever experienced, which is saying a lot, the stories just matched up incredibly. It was like just one right after the other, like telling a story that was made for itself. It was just the most incredibly bizarre thing. And then the synchronicities continued throughout the entire evening and morning. James, if you want to talk about that.
I think we're good. I think we'll be getting way off topic from the show, but I just
Yeah,
want
yeah,
to
yeah, yeah.
let everybody know that there's a reason for mentioning that lost show, because it was connected to the aura thing,
Hmm.
and some of the synchronicities
And
were as well.
and the electricity, because
Yes, yeah,
the things, both of them, your backup and the original recorder shut off.
yeah, yeah. It
It's
was an amazing night. It really was.
it really.
In the morning, and it's probably even more so because we don't have the recording of it. Because
Exactly.
yeah, so that's one of the few lost episodes, but that's the most amazing of the lost episodes, the ones that
Yeah.
turned into just streams. So, but yeah, but no, auras, I do believe are a thing, and um, it's just, and there are devices. There's a camera, and I forget what it's called, that is said to be able to record auras, and that's actually part of the synchronicities of that show too, that night, or that night in general. But so there are devices that are said to be able to record those auras and images. And this gets back to also, I was saying this the other day in another voice chat, how I was watching one of these reality paranormal investigation shows. I won't say which one because we're on the show itself. But there was this one person who was called the team in the show over because they're having activity. But also, the two investigators were sitting in the living room with the guy that called them, and they had the FLIR, the forward-looking infrared camera, with them, and they had it focused on this guy who thought he was, I believe he said he was like some kind of, I don't know if it was psychic or medium or something. He had some ability of some kind, and there were just waves of energy coming up and out from around him on this camera. And of course, it was a TV show, so I don't know for sure that 100% it was what happened, but it seems like it's possible, and maybe it's just energy waves that we just, no one would be able to feel or detect easily. But the camera was able to pick it up.
Right. I want to bring up, unless Jay has something to say, because I've talked a lot.
Well, I'm just saying that very interesting, but you guys are, that's why I'm not saying anything. But if you're not looking, you're never going to see it.
Right.
You know what I mean? If someone has that energy about it, I mean, we all know this because we talk in all of our voice chats and everything else like that. And people emit an energy, but if you're not really looking to see that, if you don't look up, you're never going to see a UFO.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not going to see anything flying around in the sky, whether it's an airplane or not, if you're always looking at the ground. If you're not keeping your mind open to the things around you, how many times do people have a feeling when they're going through the grocery store and just shrug it off because they're worried about getting to soccer on time or whatever?
Right.
They just blow it off and walk right through it. And, the entity or the ghost, whatever, is probably like, I really wanted to talk to I just wanted to say hi. That's all.
Yeah. And there are reports of, that's the thing. There are reports of apparitions and sightings of all different strange things in public spaces in the middle of the day. They're out there. They're not emphasized a lot by, all the sites or all the shows or all that, because they don't fit that scary horror story stereotype.
Narrative. The narrative.
Yeah, that narrative. Yeah. So, but they're out there, and yeah, that's exactly it. If you're not looking, you're not gonna. If you're not open to these things, and if there are exceptions, I do believe that sometimes, and just due to whatever circumstances, it can happen to people that just are not. They have no idea that it's going to happen, but your chances are definitely increased if you are aware and you don't close yourself off to those possibilities.
Right. Absolutely. And going back to what you had said before, James, it triggered an idea for me that I had thought of actually before the show a couple of days ago related to this is if if we're, if we can bust clouds, and Jay knows we can do that, and we can do that. If we can cloud bust, which I've done since I was pretty young, and I've taught a lot of people to do it, and it is very easy once you once you feel the thing and you know that it's going to happen, then you can do it. But that's an energy that you can go back to Wilhelm Reich with. It's an energy that we don't have the means to detect yet. It's an energy that scientists say is bunk because we don't have a means to detect yet. And yet you go to the chi and the teachings of different segments of Oriental like wisdom. They teach about using the chi. You have qigong. You have, all these Asian and Indian and even Egyptian mystery teachings and sciences that teach about using energy with your body. And just because we label it chi or label it organ, which is what Wilhelm Reich labeled it, or whatever, it's we're working with something. We're doing something that has an effect outside of ourselves without using tools, external physical tools. We're using our essence. We're using our minds. We're using our intention, our direction, and our thoughts. So I think that's highly connected to this.
Yeah, definitely. And I think there's that energy that is within all of us, and I think there's also that energy that through the environment, through natural. I've talked about this before too. Through natural minerals and or running water, or
Mm-hmm.
even through man-made devices, human-made devices. Because I talked about this before. My apartment, there's a nursing home behind my apartment, and there's some kind of power junction box that's like built into the ground in my backyard.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had activity that has gone along, or at least close to along the line of heading through here, through the apartment, out to the back, and out towards the nursing home.
That reminds me of something.
Hmm.
Um, people, if you run a line, now we're getting into free energy stuff, which
That's okay.
if you run a line, a wire through the earth far enough, you're going to pick up a charge. And that charge you can use depending on how long the line is and how strong it is. That's one of the experiments people have been doing for years and years and years related to accessing different energies to harness outside of the electric company, right?
Right.
So that's very interesting that you've had phenomena there. And then if you go from from that to the mechanisms, Wilhelm Reich made orgone um what would you call it, like closets for
Okay.
people, right?
Yeah.
And he in his research he posed that he was healing people with that orgone energy, and all it was a layering of different organic materials. So he would have wood, he would have um, like different gemstones and quartz and then metals. So it was a combination of different organic materials that just emitted or filtered or something this energy that then if you were encapsulated within the closet you would receive that energy and these people would heal according to him. And he's one of the guys that had issues when he he got thrown in prison and all his research was taken away. His books, they tried to take his books and get rid of them all. Many of them of course survived, but that's getting into another thing. But Wilhelm Reich also was the one who made the machines that would go out and either attract or repulse the weather. So he's the weather machine guy. He's the one that started all that. And so using that energy, like with cloud busting, which is what the song that Kate Bush did is about. It's about Wilhelm Reich and his son, I think, um, about controlling the weather with
I,
a machine. With the machine that he constructed in a way to create an orgone device. And you can still make them now, and we know how to do it. It's using copper pipes and crystals and other organic materials to do that, and you can aim the pipes wherever you want it, and it works. So it's like this is a thing, guys. It's like we have a. I just think we need to open up our minds and investigate this stuff.
Yeah, and that makes sense to me because, and again, Jay and I have talked about this before, about how houses and buildings that are made of or have stone or any kind of rock, certain kinds of stone built or in the construction of the place, that leads to that whole stone tape theory.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
the residual haunting, but also I think it can lead to just any number of paranormal things. So I don't know if you want to go into that, Jay.
Well, I mean, Apocalypse got me started on James, and you really kind of sent it home. It's like I look at the way that the kids deal with it. I've had 3 kids, and they've all been in my house and everything else. They all have their little thing, where they're imaginary friend, the lights in the room, whatever. But is it something that we know when we're born that we just gradually get talked out of? It's the people at work make fun of me because of troubled minds and all that stuff. But the point of the matter is, some of them listen to the show. It's like, well, you're making fun of me, but you're listening to it too because you wouldn't be having the conversation you're having with me now if you didn't. It's just, I know you did. How do we put ourselves in a position where we don't really want to accept these things anymore? So we just push them off to the side and get, locked down into our work or school or whatever it is, and you just pay it no never mind anymore. And it's really there. It's like the thing with the cloud busting, it terrifies me because you can do it. And something like that, I always look at, there's going to be repercussions for doing whatever you do. You're going to build a house, you're going to cut down a lot of trees, you're going to move a lot of dirt, the ground's going to move, and then you're going to have water problems in the basement because you changed the way that things were going.
Yeah. And also for anyone that is listening to this show, maybe for one of the first times, Jay is referring to another great show, Troubled Minds Radio, with Michael Strange. And you can hear all 3 of us on there at different times. We call in sometimes when we can. So another great show, and that's where I met these 2. Actually, was through that server, that Discord server. So
Yep.
very grateful for that. But yeah, just in terms of definitely, and then maybe we don't think about these things or this energy that is all around us until odd things happen somewhere down the line. And again, like when we're older, and then that's when you start to notice, oh wow, there's things, maybe when I was a kid I thought this or I saw this or heard that. Maybe those things weren't just my imagination, even when you knew at the time that wasn't just your imagination, but as you get older, again, going back to that sort of getting out of that frame of mind, you've convinced yourself it was your imagination.
Exactly. A lot of people do that. It's, I mean, if even with Sasquatch encounters, if a lot of it has to do in my research of these things with the belief of other people around you or the receptivity of people around you. And if they're knocked down so many times, that's when they start kind of doubting their own experiences, I think. So parents with kids in a lot of cases will dismiss the experiences that their kids the parents will dismiss the experiences that the kids have. And then later on in life, maybe they'll try to tell the story, and then their friends will laugh at the experience or whatever. And I think that puts a lot of doubt in people's minds and makes them question their own experiences. And I never had that problem, but a lot of people do. And I think there does come a time when a lot of these people and all the interviews and stuff that I've listened to, where they are presented with another experience that kind of blows their mind. And once they are, like you said, they step back and they look at all these experiences possibly that they had in their childhood and say, you know what? These things might have really happened. And so I think that's part of opening up. I think that's part of the path of the journey of becoming more receptive after we've been sort of knocked down, you know?
Yeah. Being open to that energy, we could say.
Yeah.
Going back to electricity. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's maybe a good place to leave off for today.
Okay.
So thank you both for being here. Apoc, if you want to talk about your various projects, you can.
Well, I don't have. Are you going to put links in the show notes and stuff
Yes,
like
I
that?
can definitely do that. Yeah.
Okay, I'll send you a couple. But yeah, I've been doing. I've been taking a bit of a break from the TikTok stuff, but I'm on Twitter all the time. I have a lot of social media stuff. I have a YouTube account where I post my podcasts and a lot of the AI art and poetry that I do. And I'm doing a new project now with some of the AI art where people can actually purchase images to use free for use as they wish to be able to, use it commercially or however they'd like. And it's just basically kind of a tip jar. It's like the only way that I'm able to make money at this point doing all the things that I do. So far, I'm working on the rest. But yeah, I have a lot of stuff if anybody wants to check it out. And James, I'll send you the links that work for those things.
Yeah. Sounds good. And just for anyone that's curious, Apoc is the one that made the image for the Logan's Cataclysms videos that I've been putting out recently.
I love them
Yeah.
so much. They're like my favorite thing right now, James. They're so freaking cute.
They've been fun. It has been a lot of fun to do that. So, and of course, as I said, you can hear Jay every so often on Troubled Minds Radio, and then here, I'm sure this won't be the last time he'll be on here. So again, thank you, Jay, for being here.
Thank you, James. Really appreciate it. Yeah, I don't do much computer stuff.
No worries.
Sorry.
No problem. And I believe that'll be it. So thank you all for listening. And this is a bonus episode. I forgot to mention that at the beginning. And there'll be another one coming out not long after this one as well, with another interview with a friend. So thank you all for listening, and I will talk to you all on the next episode of Salcedo Paranormal. Take care.